They say it's easy to be polite, yet certain people would beg to differ. Some can't seem to put aside their self-centeredness and show even the slightest empathy towards others. But in a world of karma, such unsympathetic behavior rarely gets unpunished. Even when the universe turns a blind eye to rudeness, we take matters into our own hands. An example of this would be the unforgettable event happening on the New York City subway in 2018. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. When a boy starts to misbehave, everyone on the train gets enraged. As the boy's mother decides to do nothing about her son's rude behavior, the kid has it his way. Luckily, one man wouldn't tolerate this and attempts to teach this teenager a lesson. Common courtesy may even be one of the most important lessons a child learns from their mom and dad. So when it comes to rude individuals, rudeness likely runs in their family. Chances are, these people have witnessed plenty of examples of inappropriate behavior within their family circle. Because they aren't used to good manners, such people find it hard to be polite. Why should they even bother when everyone else around them gets away with being rude? The promised subway story will show how even such people can get offended when others mimic their disrespectful behavior. From boomers to millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, there seems to be a tendency of rising self-centeredness. It appears that the only thing today's kids are occupied with other than themselves is their cell phones. And more often than not, the only figure of authority they have any respect for is the low battery notification. But are they the ones to blame? From the minute they're born, their parents give them a digital toy to keep them busy all day long. At least at first, this seems like a win-win situation. The parents rest a bit while the kids are on their smartphones playing games or watching cartoons. Unfortunately, this kind of upbringing can quickly get out of hand. Soon enough, these children start to desocialize, drifting away from the real world. They're often unaware of the events taking place in their close vicinity. What goes on inside their phones is the only thing that matters. And that's not even the whole story. Before we finally move on to the rude boy on the train, are there any subway riders out there? If so, we're already familiar with good subway etiquette. Unfortunately, some people act as if they've never heard about it. But to be fair, given everything we've discussed so far, they probably haven't. Some people even act proud of their lack of manners in public transportation. Bus or train rides often serve as outlets for their rudeness and disrespectful behavior. So we can often witness fights over seats, loud phone calls, unbearable music coming from someone's smartphone, etc., and that's when the fights occur. Unfortunately, our comebacks seem to encourage rude passengers even more. The more we stand up to them, the more proudly they showcase their lack of manners. The only language these guys would understand is counter-assault. The hero of our story realized just that. The only way to outwit arrogant public transport passengers is to beat them at their own game. That would be our only hope of getting through to these troublemakers. What's more, they might even learn something from it. The following story is an example of how self-absorbed some of today's kids are. But also, the story confirms that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Children's lack of public transport manners is a direct consequence of improper upbringing. Once upon a time, there was this girl who decided to take the subway to work. If it weren't for Isabel Kim to witness and document this train ride, the story wouldn't have spread so fast. Luckily, Isabel noticed what was going on and took a couple of pictures to share the event with her Twitter followers. In the meantime, her story started to serve as a lesson to all breakers of unwritten rules. So what was it that enraged this girl enough to post this story online? Isabel took the crowded subway to work at rush hour. Since the train was full of people, all seats were occupied. As a result, several people had to stand throughout most of the ride. But on a busy day like this, none of the passengers expected a comfortable ride. Therefore, nobody was getting all comfy except for one boy traveling with his mother. He decided it was a good idea to lie down a bit, placing his feet directly on the bench. Leaning against his mother, the boy assumed the make-yourself-at-home position. His dirty sneakers were on their way to mess up the seat for some future passengers. This boy's decision to stretch along the bench meant nobody else could sit there. So what we have so far is a train full of people having to stand while the kid takes up more than 2 seats. Everybody else on the train was shocked by the kid's rudeness and audacity. A couple of passengers even politely asked for one of the seats his legs were taking up. To everyone's astonishment, the kid unrelentingly refused to move. Instead, he completely indulged in his smartphone, probably playing games or watching something. He seemed perfectly unaware of how uncomfortable the other passengers began to feel, both physically and mentally. After he refused to give up the what would be empty seats, the boy completely disregarded those who stood around him. But this kid wasn't the only one who knew nothing about empathy. By the looks of it, his mother was even worse. She showed no interest whatsoever in what was going on right in front of her. The woman seemed like her son's rude behavior didn't bother her at all. The people who began protesting against the kid's rude behavior soon gave up. Seeing how little the boy's mother cared was even more discouraging. For that reason, there wasn't much they could do except wait until the boy and his mother left. Lucky for them, someone else had other more radical plans. This man was utterly shocked by the child's arrogance, which is why he decided to do something about it. Chances are, he was already used to rudeness, so he didn't plan on tolerating it. Instead, he came up with the perfect plan to beat this kid at his own game. More importantly, the guy had enough courage to act on his idea and stand up to the boy. Except this guy wasn't going to stand, but rather sit. Much like everyone else before him, he kept asking the kid to take his legs off the bench. When the boy refused, he knew his well-thought-out plan was about to be executed. Therefore, he didn't wait much longer until he finally sat on the kid's legs. Before he figured what was going on, the rude boy had just enough time to move one of his legs. To his astonishment, the other one was left trapped under the man's body. The kid looked at his opponent in dismay, not being able to hide his reaction. How can he be so rude? The boy must have thought. What the other passengers must have been thinking was, how come we haven't thought of this? The man was now getting comfortable in his seat, all the while being proud of his brave action. Most of the passengers also approved of his idea, much like Isabel's followers on Twitter. However, a small portion of them wondered if the guy's action could count as an assault. So the boy had to give up his seat after all. It seems there's no limit to certain people's audacity. Even when someone tries to point out their bad behavior, it's all in vain. More often than not, rudeness doesn't understand the language of requests. So what can we do against it? It seems best to think outside the box and try to find a creative solution. Like the hero of our story, we might end up doing the right thing and make everyone's day. For all of us who are proud of what this guy dared to do, we can even get a custom-made t-shirt featuring the boy's shocked expression. We believe this can serve as a symbol of victory over all rude people out there.